This conference will now be recorded.
Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Let me just power on the machine before we proceed. So guys, yesterday we have done with networking class. Now today let us try to work with one more very important concept related to security, which is called as SE Linux. See, SE Linux stands for Security Enhanced Linux. That means on your existing layer of security, you are adding one more layer of security. That is nothing but SLNX. Okay. So normally for security in our system, we uses something firewall or antiviruses, right? To make it more strong security, we add one more layer of security, which is called as SE-Linux, right? So when we talk about SE-Linux, see normally the two security models that works in the system are discretionary access control and mandatory access control. Discretionary access control is your regular uh, security for read-write permissions on the file, ACLs, etc., and firewalls. So what happens is once people exploits it and gain access to your system, like hackers are there, they'll try to bypass firewalls by doing some security breach or hacking concept. So once they get access, they will get access to anywhere in the system. Right? Hackers, they just bypass the securities, they know usernames and passwords and all that thing. So once they bypass that security, they will be able to gain access to the whole system. But to make it more tighter, we apply SE Linux, policies and all. SE Linux is directly handled by kernel. The policies and all are managed by kernel. So in that scenario, what happens is when someone tries to enter into your system with some specific applications, like normally hackers enter into your system by using the access of some applications. Now it can be FTP, HTTP web servers, or maybe Samba, DNS, or any external application. So what SE Linux will do is once people enter into the system, it jailed them to one specific area. It won't allow people to roam freely into the system. That means they cannot change the directories on their own. They cannot upload, download anything on their own. So every small, big thing after entering into the system is controlled by SE Linux. So people after entering into the system, what they can do, what they cannot do, all these things are controlled by SE Linux only. Okay, all right. More about that we are going to learn in the coming time. Now, how SE Linux works, let's try to see the SE Linux protection policies and all. See, what happens in SE Linux is we have a subject. Now, subject can be any process through which people are trying to reach out to your system. Now, maybe it can be an FTP process that allows people to connect and download the data, or HTTP as a web server, or any other application they might be using to connect to your system. Now, with subject, our goal is to reach out till object. Now, object is some files that they want to access. So whenever any application or any subject tries to reach out to object, between subject and object there is SE Linux security that would be running and monitoring each and every action. So it would check whether this action is allowed or not allowed. If that action is allowed in the configuration, people will get access to that object. If not, then they'll see denial message. So most of the time when people connect to our system using some applications like FTP, HTTP, DNS, Samba, they'll find that few activities they are not allowed to work with, right? So whenever they are trying to upload something, suddenly it gets blocked, or they are trying to download something, it would get blocked. Why? Because SE Linux might be protecting your system and not allowing people to freely roam, upload, download data, even though they gain access to the system. That is why SE Linux is important to protect the system, protect your environment. Okay, more on this particular concept we will understand when we deal with FTP server or HTTP server or Samba server, all that thing. When we deal, we will automatically understand the concept that uh, how SE Linux is protecting the system and how it is really an important concept. Now, moving forward, there are configuration file for SE Linux, which is etc selinux config or etc sysconfig selinux. Anywhere you go, you're going to get the same configuration file. All right. So sorry. Okay. There are modes of SE Linux. See, everything has a mode. If you look around, there might be electric switch that has two modes, on or off. Same way, SE Linux has three modes. How many modes? Three modes. What are those? Enforcing, permissive, and disabled. Now, what does this enforcing, permissive, and disabled will do? See, in a simple understanding, enforcing is nothing but active mode where SE Linux is completely active and it is protecting the system's environment for unauthorized accesses and all that thing. If it is disabled, that means it is inactive. No SE Linux protection is there. Now, between active and inactive, there is one more mode called permissive mode. Now, permissive mode is nothing but a warning mode or debugging mode. See, sometimes what happens is you might have some issues with SE Linux. So what you want to do, you want to put down security of SE Linux for a short period of time so that you may fix the issue and again activate SE Linux. Normally what happens if you want to disable SE Linux, then you have to reboot your system, right? Because on the top of kernel, SE Linux policies are applied, and to remove anything on the top of kernel, you have to reboot your system. So I want to avoid rebooting. Temporarily, I just want to withdraw SE Linux for some time to debug an issue. So what I can do, I can put SE Linux in permissive mode for time being. and it is not going to do any protection. It is very much similar to disable, but the only important thing of permissive mode is it won't protect the system, but it generate logs like who came, what they did, what was the status of SE Linux, and it prints warnings also. Like this is not a genuine activity to do with SE Linux concepts and all that thing. So instead of protecting the system, it only prints warning and the logs will be stored. So whenever there is an issue related to SE Linux is there, we will put SE Linux in permissive mode to temporarily withdraw SE Linux uh, access or SE Linux protection. And we'll do our work, and once it is fixed, we will again bring back SE Linux into enforcing. Because going from enforcing to permissive or permissive to enforcing does not require any reboot. But enforcing permissive, if you are trying to change it to disable, then you have to reboot the system. And if SE Linux is disabled, again you want to make it active, you need to reboot the system. So any mode to disable, reboot. Disable back to any mode, you have to reboot. So to avoid potentially that reboot, we can go with permissive and again bring it back to enforcing while the system is up and running. Okay. The next thing is booleans. See, booleans are small answers for some questions like true or false, on or off, 0 or 1. Normally, these are the boolean values. These are small variables whom you can set to true or false, on or off, or 0 or 1. Like small activities, user can change the directory. You can say true or false. User can upload the data, true or false. User can download the data, true or false. Like that, small things that you can control related to application with respect to SE Linux is nothing but Boolean. The major part of SE Linux is SE Linux policy designing. Now, guys, this is very high level thing. It is not done by you or me so easily. Architect level people would do that policy designing. So we are not going to do any policy designing. What we are going to do is simply using the policies that are designed and given to us. So it's like we are trying to learn how to drive a car, not how to design a car. So already a car is there, it's already designed, already it is available. We are using it, but we are not learning how to design it, right? But one of the major component of SE Linux policies, what we are going to cover is SE Linux context. See guys, normally on a file or directory, we apply some permissions like read, write, execute, etc. Same way, SE Linux related also we have some permissions that can be applied on a file on a directory, right? To control behavior towards that file and to control behavior towards that directory. So SE Linux permissions that can be applied on a file and on a directory is nothing but SE Linux contexts, right? Fine. It's like which user can access, how it can access, all that thing. Now let's log in and let's see few practicals. Let us say, guys, I would like to check SE Linux is presently enforcing permissive or disable which mode. You can go with a command get enforce. When you run this command, it tells you the present state of SE Linux is enforcing. To get little more detail, you can go with SE status. When you go with SE status, it tells you SE Linux is enabled and the data related SE Linux is kept in sys fs Linux folder, right? So if you just check it out, ls sys fs Linux, so you will find here that all the data of Linux is kept here. The booleans, the context, the policies, and many important things are maintained over here, right? So this particular thing will store Linux important data, and it only displays the information if Linux is enabled. Suppose you have disabled, so this mount point will not be available and you won't see any data, right? And there are some information that is kept about policy. So we are not going to talk about that. Just ignore it. Targeted policy type, right? But the important thing what we have to cover is what is the current mode. Current mode of SE Linux is enforcing, and mode from config file is also enforcing. So what is the difference between current mode and mode from config file? See guys, current mode is enforcing. If we like, we can change it to permissive, right? Or disable, whatever. But whatever I am changing currently, it is not going to update the config file. And the mode from config file is always a permanent mode. That means every time the system restart, which mode SE Linux is going to come back. That is decided from config file. It's same like your permanent mounting. When you call a partition is permanent mounted, when you update the config file. So same way, current mode I can change from enforcing to permissive or disable, but that is not going to update the config file. So the change whatever I'll be doing in the mode will be temporary until unless the same change you do in the config file. And config file change is always a permanent change, the change in which it is going to come back. Then again, it is talking about some policy related things. We are not going to discuss that, and we don't have to discuss that also. Let's move ahead and let us see how to deal with that SE Linux permissions, which are called as uh, context. So, for example, I have a file here. File name is hard. Now, if I say ls-l hard, it is showing me normal permission, right? Let me give some regular permission to it. Okay. So now you see it is having some normal permission, read, write, read and read, something like that. But same place, if you say ls-l capital Z, hit enter. So you see it is going to show you SE Linux related permissions. So over here we don't have to worry about the full thing. Just understand over here it is showing you something called admin underscore home underscore t. That means this file is only accessible in admin's home directory, and it will only allow administrator to access it. If a normal user try to access it with uh, any process, suppose through FTP I logged in into the system. Now through FTP I'm coming over here and I'm not an admin user. Even though it has full permission, it won't allow normal users to access it because it is an administrator's home directory file. It won't allow anybody to touch that. SE Linux is going to protect it. So admin home means this particular file belongs to administrator's home directory and can only be accessed by administrator. Normal users, it is not going to allow it to access it. Okay. Anyway, same way, I might have a directory. For example, I have a directory called my directory. So you see it is displaying some normal permission. If you say ls-ld capital Z and the directory, so you are going to find it out that it is again showing you similar thing, admin home t, right? that means this file or this directory is also accessible towards admin home. Now guys, suppose I would like to change that context. Now, unfortunately, there is no manual pages or any information pages that might tell you how to or in which situation what context to be used. You can just say man SE Linux, right? So it might give you some information on SE Linux, like what is SE Linux, what are those contexts and all. But it won't tell you that in which particular thing you have to go for which type of SE Linux concepts and all, right? So here what happens is we need to depend on documents that might be provided, right? Sometimes what happens, suppose you are configuring an application like database server or some applications like SAP, Temenos, or any other application that is used in your organization, they provide documentations. So when you try to go with the documentation, they might be mentioning over there that for this application, the context of the files and directories in application folder should be so and so. So here what I'm trying to teach you is whatever context is given, how to apply that. So in different scenario, even till the end of our curriculum, we are going through different context we are going to learn. For example, as of now, this particular file, the file name is hard. It is showing me the context admin home. Suppose I would like to change it and I would like to make it something called public content. See, public content is one of that context. If you apply it on any file or any directory, it becomes accessible by everyone. So SE Linux is not going to stop anyone to access it. It's like giving full access. In very rare case, it happens that we use public content. So forget about public content. It might be any blah blah context, whatever is given to you. Just concentrate that how to change that context. That is important. And this change is going to be a permanent change. So what I'll do, I'll use a command chcon. Chcon stands for change context, and I want to change the type to public underscore content underscore t, right? And the file name is hard. Now you just check it out. See, last time it was admin home. Now it is changed to public content. Now, as soon as you give public content, you will feel that people will are allowed to access this particular files and directories when they are connected through application. So applications are important over here. We should have some application. Through that application, we should log in into the system and then accessing it. So as of now, I cannot show you the real effect. But once we go with applications like FTP, HTTP, NFS, Samba, what we are going to learn, there I'll show you the real effect, that how these contexts will be affecting the behavior of applications, right? So till then, don't worry that how it is impacting, but practice how to change this context. Whatever given context is there, how I have to apply it. That is important. And also, I have a directory. For instance, this directory is having admin home. And suppose this directory contains some more files inside it, more directories inside it. So what I want to do is, for the directory and all its content at a time, I want to change the context for everyone. So to change the context for the directory and all its content, you have to use chcon hyphen capital R. I don't have to tell you what R stands for. R is for recursive option. So recursively, I want to change the type to public underscore content underscore t. For which particular directory? The directory name is my_dir. Now, if you just check it out, ls-ldz, it tells you that I've changed it to public content. And if you check out all the files inside it, it is going to show you public content. So this is the way how you can change the context for the directory and all the files inside it, right? So don't worry about how it is going to impact. We are going to see the live effect of this change when we also configure an application. So as of now, I'm just doing a net practice kind of thing, that how to change it. But once we configure some application, we will see real effects of these things. Okay, now let us say that I have changed the context for a file number of times, right? Many times I have changed it. Now there is a request that we have to reset the context. Now, I don't know what is the default context for this particular file or this particular location. I just want to run a command and I need automatically SE Linux context should be relabeled. So how I can restore the context back to default? So anytime when you have done lots of things and nothing is working, you want to reset back the SE Linux context, then you can use this command restore con. Now, if you want to see the output, that what was earlier, what it is changing to now, you can go with restore con -v and the file name. The file name is hard. So what it does that whatever might be the current context, automatically it is going to reset it back to default value. So what it changed to? You see, it says that earlier it was public content, which is now being changed to admin home T. You just check it out. It is back to its default context. So whenever you have changed the context many times, now you want to reset it back to its original or default context. Simply you can say restore con and automatically the context will be restore back to its original value or default value. Same way you can do it for a directory. For example, I have my dir. Inside this directory, I have some subdirectories, I have some files. Now, if I want to restore for everyone in a single shot, then you can say restore con hyphen capital R, right? And if you want to see the output, add V. If you are not interested to see the output, just type the directory name. Now you again run ls-ldz. See, earlier it was public content, which is now changed to admin home. And check all the files inside it. They were all public content. Now it has been restored to admin home. So like that, you can restore the context back to any particular default value you want. Now let us say that I want to make context as default for a file or a directory. I have some file or some directory and I want to make that file's default context so that whenever restore con command is run, it should be back to that value what we want. See guys, for this experiment, I would request you to create a file in slash. Don't create it in your slash root because slash root will not allow you to put any default context because root is an important user and related to root user, it won't allow you to make any changes. So maybe in another user's directory you can do it or simply will create a file in slash. For example, I have a file slash my file. Now this particular file, if you just check it out, it is having some context called etc runtime. Now what I want to do is there are various contexts available, guys. Just now we saw one of the context public content. Same way you have httpd sys content. Maybe this particular file is going to be used by HTTP services. So I will change the context to httpd sys content. When you change it to httpd sys content, it allow HTTP and HTTP users to access this file. So in order to make it as a default, see, I don't want to presently change it. I want to make it as a default context. To change for any file a default context, then we have a command called um, semanage. So we need to use this command semanage f context file context hyphen a add a default value. What value? Hyphen t the type, whatever you want. For example, in this scenario, I'm going with Samba share, or you can go with httpd sys content. Whatever is your choice, you can go for it, right? Followed by the file location. Let's go with Samba share. httpd sys content will see for directory. So in order to make that change, I'll say semanage file context, add a default context with the type public, or let's say Samba underscore share underscore t. Maybe I'm planning to use this file with Samba server. So I want this file to be accessible with Samba users when they are connected with Samba application. So I'll say that for this particular file, the default context should be Samba underscore share underscore t. Now when I hit enter, just observe it is taking some time. Why it is taking some time? Because there is a file that is going to get generated, and inside it there will be this rule created. Where is that file? etc selinux targeted context files file context dot local. Now that is the location where your created default rules will be kept. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'll say I'll simply go over there. ls etc selinux context, targeted context, and file context dot default, file context dot local. Oh, I need to use cat command. I'm so sorry. So you see, it says that this file is auto generated. Do not edit directly. So here is the rule created. For my file, the default context will be samba underscore share underscore t. So whenever you run restore con command, you will find that automatically on this file, it is going to get back to samba underscore share underscore t. So as of now, if we check the context of that file, it says etc runtime or something. Now, if you run the command restore con on slash my file, now go back and check it out. Automatically, it has been changed to Samba share T. So whenever you want to make a default context, then you have to go with semanage f context command that is going to create a default context. Now to remove that default context, you can go with semanage hyphen d. Here you have used hyphen a for adding a default. If you say D, delete the default. So that particular rule will be deleted. I don't want to remove it, let it be. Now, same thing I would like to do for a directory. For a directory, we have some little different approach. I'll go with mkdir. I'll create some directory in slash with the name mydir. Not only I'll create a directory, but inside that directory, I'm going to create some files, maybe 1, 2, and 3. So scenario is I have a directory called mydir, which is having some context, and inside that directory we have 3 files. They are also having some context, default underscore t. Now for this directory, let us say I would like to change the context to httpd syscontent. Maybe we are planning to use this directory for HTTP or web server concern, right? So if you want to change the context for the directory as a default context, then we go again with a command se manage fcontext -a -t. Add a default type to httpd syscontent underscore t. But guys, I'm going for a directory. Now, whenever you are going for a directory, inside directory, always there is a chance that more content will be added. So my requirement is whatever files that might be created inside it in future time also, they should also get the same default context. So whenever you want to say that for the directory and the content also, then you have to give this location. You have to say slash mydir. If you don't give the next step, if you just give mydir, only directories context will be set to default, but the content inside it will not follow the same context. So if you want to go inside that also, then you have to go with slash mydir with a bracket. You have to give slash dot star. That means all the files, open files, hidden files, whatever I create inside it, all the files inside it should also get the same default value, right? So this is the way you can mention that all the files inside it should also get the same context. So I'll say se manage fcontext -a -t, and this time I'll say httpd underscore sys content. Let me just check it out. Have I not made any mistake? Right. Underscore t. For whom I want to make it for a directory. Now, as it is a directory, so what I need to do, I need to use double quote. I need to say slash mydir. Now, inside that directory, you need to give a bracket. In the bracket, again a slash dot star followed by question mark. So I'll use bracket slash dot star. That means all the content inside the directory, whether it is a regular file or directory or hidden file, whatever it might be, I want each and everything inside it to get same context. Now again, you see it is going to update the same file. Okay, just go back to same location. The location is etc se linux targeted context file context dot local. So you see it says for my directory and all its content, the default context is httpd sys content, right? Now you just check it out. ls-ldz my directory and all the files inside it. Now I'm going to use restore con hyphen capital R for my directory. Now just check it out. You'll find for the directory the context is httpd syscontent. all the files inside it, they are also showing HTTPD sys content. So this is the way for any specific file you want, you can create your own default context so that if any time restore con command is executed, it should automatically get reset to the desired value what you are trying to make it. Okay, so this is how we can make a default context of SE Linux. Okay, now let's move ahead and let's try to talk about something called booleans. See guys, as I told you, booleans are nothing but the small activities that you can control related to any applications. Like guys, you are having FTP, HTTP, Samba, DNS, MariaDB, MySQL, or some Oracle application. I want to control some behaviors, right? So in that scenario, you can use a command get se bool hyphen a. I want to see all the Boolean values. Now, when I hit enter, you see all the Booleans in your system right now with their status will be printed. So you can see most of them are off, few of them are showing you on also, right? So these are the small activities that you can control. For example, I don't want to see the whole list. I'm only interested to see the Boolean related to uh, FTP. So you can say grep FTP. It shows you all the booleans related to FTP. Or maybe you want to see the booleans related to HTTP. So it will show you all the booleans related to HTTP. Or maybe you are interested to see the booleans related to Samba. Or maybe you are interested to see the booleans related to uh, MariaDB. Do we have it? No, or at least we can have MySQL because MariaDB is not installed. That's the reason I might not see any such thing. Anyway, so you see MySQL related things. So let us say that I want to make changes in these booleans value, right? For example, I'm going with some Samba. Now, when you go with Samba, there is some option Samba create home directories off. Now maybe I want to change it to on. How can I make change in that boolean value? You to change the boolean value, you have to use set se bool. To view the information, get se bool. To change the information, set se bool, followed by the boolean name, followed by the value. See, you can say on to make it on, or you can say true to make it on, or you can type 1. These three options are allowed. On, true, 1. To disable, you can go with off, false, and 0. So on and off, true or false, 1 or 0. These are the three types of values what you can use. For example, I want to make it on, so I can type 1, or I can type true, or I can type on, anything you like. Now when I hit enter and just check back, get SE bool, you see last time it was off and now it is on. And again, I would like to make it off. So instead of on, I can type off, or I can type 0, or I can type false. So you see it is going to make it off. But if I do the changes like that, suppose I told set se bool and make it on. So right now it would be on, but after reboot, again it will become off. Why? Because the change you have done is temporary. Or suppose there was a value on, you made it off. Reboot the machine, again it will be off. Why? Because the change what we did over here was temporary. Now, if you want to make Boolean change permanent, then what you need to do is with the command you should use hyphen capital P. When you use hyphen capital P, it guarantees that this change is a permanent change. So when I hit enter, you see it is taking some time. Permanent change will take time. Temporary was very quick, but permanent will take some time to update. Now, if I go back with get SE bowl, you see it is telling you that this change is done. Now reboot the machine and test it if you want. It is not going to change to off. It will be staying back to on only. So that is how you can change a Boolean value permanently. Okay, so again, guys, when we will be working with FTP or HTTP or Samba, you will try to find out that how important the role of these booleans are there. Small activities will be controlled. Like if I go with FTP, there are many important things in FTP. So you see, FTP, I can protect write access. I don't want anybody to read and write. Sorry, to write. So here you see FTP anonymous write was off. I don't want full control to be given. So FTP full access off. That means people can connect through FTP, but they will never get full access. They'll get only limited access, right? So like that, there are many things what you can control for the people so that they may get or they may not get full access or other things. So again, all these things will get meaning when we do it with some application. So as of now, we don't have any application configured, but once we go with some application, you will really understand the role of SE Linux. So as of now, do not worry. Whatever we have done, just practice it. If you remember how to change the boolean, how to change the context and other things, it would be very nice. And when we go with some application, you will see the real effect, how it is going to protect your system. Now, lastly, you want to change the mode of SE Linux. For example, if I say get enforce or SE status, it says that right now SE Linux is enforcing. Current mode is enforcing and permanent mode is also enforcing. Let us say I would like to change this mode to permissive or disable. Now there is one rule what we have to understand. See, there are three modes: enforcing, permissive, and disable. Now remember one thing, that from enforcing to permissive or permissive to enforcing, you can go anytime you like. This can be done online. There is no downtime, no disturbance, nothing is required. But whenever you are planning to go from enforcing to disable or permissive to disable, in this scenario, you have to mandatorily reboot your system. Without rebooting, you cannot make any mode to disable. From any mode you are converting to disable, you need to reboot the machine. Disable cannot be done without rebooting. So if you are planning to go for disable completely, that means you have to 100% reboot your machine. And from disable, if you want to come back to permissive or enforcing, even in that scenario, you need to reboot your machine mandatorily. Without rebooting, there is no disable or back from disable. If you're going to disable, reboot the machine. If you are coming out of disable, you have to reboot your machine. Why we have to reboot? Because guys, all the policies are applied on the top of kernel, and to make the change on kernel, reboot is required, because permissive is not going to remove anything from kernel level. It is only going to withdraw permission for a small period of time. But whenever you are going for disable, permanently all the changes from kernel level also will be removed. And for that concern, we must reboot the machine mandatorily. Okay, So let us move ahead and let us try to deal with this particular concept. So guys, to change SE Linux mode, we have a command set enforce. Last time we saw set SE bool. Get and set is very popular. So if you say get enforce, it tells you what is the current mode. Same way, if you say set enforce, it allows you to change the mode. So set enforce is allowing you to change the mode, enforcing or permissive, but no disable, because disable need to reboot. So you can say set enforce, enforcing or permissive, or there is a shortcut 1 or 0. 1 means enforcing and 0 means permissive, right? So let us say that I would like to make it permissive. Simple command is there, set enforce permissive. Go back and check it out. You'll find that it is changed to permissive. Now again, you want to bring it back to enforcing, so you can say set enforce enforcing. Just check it out, it is enforcing. Or you can use shortcuts. You can say set enforce 0 and check it out, it is permissive. Now say set enforce 1, it is back to enforcing. But guys, whatever change we are doing, suppose I say set enforce 0. Now you run SE status and check. It says current mode is changed to permissive, but permanent mode from config is enforcing. That means right now it is permissive, but if system restart, it is going to come back into enforcing. So if you want to change permanently permissive, then there is no hyphen P option over here. You have to manually go to config file. Where is the config file? etc selinux config. When you come to this configuration file, there is a line here, selinux is equals to enforcing. So you need to come here and you need to change this particular line from enforcing to permissive, for example. Now let me save and quit. Just run SE status. You see current mode is permissive and mode from config file is also permissive. So this is the way you can change a mode and make it permanent. Now let us say I want to make it disable. To make it disable, there is no command. You need to go to config file. Where is the config file? etc selinux config. Go to this file, same behavior, remove that word permissive and type disable. If you don't want to type, see here already spellings are written. Enforcing, permissive, disable. Just copy paste it, right? And let us save and quit. So now you check SE status. It says current mode is permissive and mode from config file is disabled. Now I'm going to reboot my machine to make that change happen. Let us say reboot. See, this is a trial environment, test environment. I'm simply running reboot without any fear. But on production, you need to get approval, applications should be down, databases must be down, no work should be going on. Then you should reboot to avoid any data losses. So guys, I just rebooted the machine. Now let's see that how that change is going to impact. During boot, I just want you to observe, is it showing any other behavior? You can press escape to see booting process. Now you can see that any indecent or different process is trying to show, or the boot is normal. That's what I want you to observe. See, so far there is no different behavior. System is booting normally as it used to boot regularly. While booting, it did not inform anything about SE Linux or something. But when I try to log in, let me just reconnect to the session. Now guys, you run get enforce, it is disabled. You say SE status, it says disabled. Try to change it, set enforce 0, it says not allowed. Set enforce 1, not allowed. Because once it is disabled, all SE Linux powers are withdrawn. Now if you want to re-enable it, then there is only one way to re-enable. You have to go to config file. Where is the config file? etc selinux config. When you go to this file, same place there is disabled. Now guys, if you want your SE Linux to come back to full power, whenever it is disabled, it is highly recommended that you should come back to enforcing. If you say come back to permissive, it may not be fully activated and later you might face some issues. So whenever it is disabled, if you are leaving disabled, you should come back to enforcing for perfect and complete SE Linux activation. So I am telling, come back to enforcing. No spelling mistake. If you do spelling mistake during boot, it will fail. You have to go to emergency mode and again correct this file. Now after making the change, now I'm going to reboot. See, when I say reboot, this time when the system is rebooting, you will find that it will warn us related to SE Linux behavior. That SE Linux policy relabeling is going on, and relabeling will take very long time. So what we need to do, we need to simply wait for it to complete relabeling. And once relabeling is finished, it is going to again reboot automatically. So here we have to wait for at least 5 to 10 minutes to finish this process. See, when I ask it to remove SE Linux power, it removed very fast. But when I'm asking it to reapply that power, you'll see how long it is going to take. We see this concept in our lives also, that to make anything it is going to take a long time, and to break it, it is matter of fraction of seconds itself. So when I asked to remove, it was so quick to remove, but when I'm asking it to reapply, you see it is going to take a long time, and it is going to tell us that SE Linux policies relabeling is going on, it will take a long time, you should wait. Like that it is going to inform us now. See, over here you can observe that it is telling you SC Linux targeted policy relabel is required. Relabeling could take very long time depending on file system size and speed of hard drive. So from here, it is going to take a long time, at least 5 minutes or more than 5 minutes to complete this process. And once this process is completed, you'll see that it is going to restart automatically. So we don't have to do anything but to wait and give it time to relabel all SE Linux policies. So let's wait and see how much time will it take to perform this activity. Minimum it is going to take 5 minutes, maximum 10 minutes. So hopefully within 5 minutes this process will complete and system will get automatically restarted. This is the reason permissive mode was introduced, because every time you are working you have a doubt that SE Linux is giving issue, to fix the issue, I don't have to disable it, reboot the system and all that thing. I can simply put it into permissive. All the SE Linux powers will be withdrawn. I'll work with that and again enforce it. But if you have decided that you are never going to use SE Linux, then you can make it disable. There are few application who does not like SE Linux, right? Like uh, um, Veritas clusters are there, for example. It does not ask us to keep SE Linux. First step, what Symantec documents will tell you is disable SE Linux. Don't use it because it is very complicated stuff. Every step there is a security. So sometimes too much security will also have issues with application. So they simply says that avoid using SE Linux. So in that case, rarely it happens, not in every case, but rarely it happens that because of that applications we have to disable SE Linux. Otherwise, temporarily, if we want to disable, permissive mode is very good. The CLINX policies are completed relabeling, and one more time the system automatically got rebooted. This time the booting process will be normal and you see the system is booting perfectly. It won't ask us to do anything, the system might boot normally. Why it's taking too much time? Okay, it's almost done. All right, so let me connect to our machine one more time. So system got finally booted. Now if I say get enforce, it is back to enforcing SE status. It says everything is enabled. Right now it is enforcing and mode from config file is also enforcing. Right? So this is the way how SE Linux needs to be dealt with. So don't worry about how the effects will be making. Just concentrate on how to make these changes, like changing the context or making a context as a default, changing booleans, changing mode. Just learn that simply how to work with them. The effects, I'm going to promise you that when we go with FTP, HTTP and other servers, at that application level, you will find that how these concepts are going to protect your environment. We'll see that live thing. So as of now, if you have any questions, you can put your questions before we stop the session. Okay, I think there are no questions, so we'll stop the session here. Please do practice. We'll see the impact of this in the coming time.
Hello.
Yes, Prasad.
Sir, please want to explain again.